foreign investors on your cap table, that alone doesn't automatically kill your SBIR chances. But if you think this is just a check the box matter, you're badly underestimating what has changed in the new law, because this is no longer a background issue. This is part of the operating framework. Hey everyone, I'm Corey, a lawyer helping entrepreneurs decode law, technology, and innovation. And this video is part of our 7-part series on the new SBIR law and what founders need to understand now that the program has been reauthorized and updated. Today we're talking about one of the most important risk areas in the new framework: foreign ties, national security review, and why your cap table now matters in a very different way. Because for a lot of founders, the real mistake is not understanding the full story of foreign ties before the government starts asking questions. So here's what we're covering in this video. What has actually changed in the new law? Why this is more than just increased scrutiny? What kinds of relationships now matter? Why your cap table has become a national security issue? And what founders should be doing right now. So what's the big shift here? Foreign ties is now built into the framework. Let's start with the biggest point. A lot of founders still talk about the issue as if it's just more scrutiny. This framing is too vague. What has changed is much more than that. The new law does not just suggest agencies be more careful, it directs them to evaluate whether a small business presents a security risk. And that includes due diligence, disclosures, and coordination with federal intelligence and law enforcement capabilities. That is a very different environment that founders are typically used to, because now this issue is not living at the edge of the process, it is living much closer to the center of the process. Why would founders misread this? For a lot of businesses, foreign ties, people immediately think, do we have foreign ownership? That's too narrow of a view, because the new environment is not just about whether a foreign investor owns stock, it's about a broader relationship map around the company. That means agencies may be looking more closely at things like financial ties, affiliations, investment relationships, licensing agreements, joint ventures, cybersecurity practices, key personnel relationships, broader business relationships tied to countries of concern or restricted industries. So if your internal analysis starts and ends with, we're a US company, that's not going to be enough anymore. So why is this a big deal? Here's why it matters. A founder may look at a company and think, we're domestic, we're founder-led, we're operationally fine. But then you actually map your structure and you find a foreign investor from an earlier round. You find an offshore contractor team, a licensing relationship with foreign connections, a joint development arrangement, cross-border research ties, a key person affiliated with the company that was never really pressure tested. Maybe each of these facts is manageable on its own, but when you put them together, the story becomes much more complicated. And complicated is where risks start to grow. Why is your cap table different now? This is the shift founders really need to understand. Your cap table used to feel mostly like a finance document. Who owns what, who diluted whom, who has rights, who controls governance. That is still true. But now in the SBIR context, your cap table can also become part of a security risk story. That means the question is not just who owns shares, it's also what does this ownership structure imply? Does it suggest foreign influence? Does it connect to other sensitive relationships? Does it fit cleanly in the rest of the company's disclosure story? Can leadership explain it clearly? This is why it has become more than a finance issue and is now also a credibility and diligence issue. Not every foreign tie is fatal, so let's be careful here. This does not mean every foreign tie disqualifies a company. That would be the wrong takeaway. The point is not foreign equals impossible. The point is foreign ties now require disciplined analysis. And this is a very different statement. Some founders hear about a tighter review and they panic. Other founders ignore it and assume it won't matter. Both extremes are mistakes. The right posture is just disciplined clarity. Know what relationships exist, know which ones are passive, which ones are operational, which ones create real questions, and make sure your internal understanding matches what you disclose externally. The real risk is actually an incomplete story. That is what hurts founders. They think they know the structure, but they only know the simplified version of the structure. They know the clean founder pitch version, not the fully pressure-tested version. And when the company cannot explain it on its own, the affiliations, the licenses, cross-border relationships clearly, this is when problems can show up, because your internal story and your external disclosure start drifting apart. There, you actually do create legal risk through diligence risk, through your credibility risk. Why this is not just a grant issue. This is another place founders get too narrow. They think, okay, this still matters for my SBIR application. Yes, but it usually does not stop there. If you're in a sensitive sector, think about AI, defense tech, biotech, semiconductors, infrastructure-related technology, advanced computing, you're going to see versions of these same questions again and again. In fundraising, in partnerships, in procurement, in merger and acquisition diligence. So SBIR is often the first place where a company is forced to get serious about this, and that's why founders should not treat it like a one-time compliance headache. They should treat it like part of building a cleaner company, diligence stack, and story. So what are mistakes to avoid here? If you're treating foreign ties like filling out a form, that would be a mistake. This is really about control, it's about transparency, it's about consistency, and whether the company stands on its own structure. If your team cannot explain the relationship map cleanly, then you're not ready. If your company keeps using words like passive without really understanding the relationship, then you may not be ready. If your internal documents and external disclosures tell different versions of the same story, then you are probably not ready. And that is the standard founders should be using now. So next, what's your discipline playbook to move forward quickly? First, you need to map your cap table completely, not just the clean version, the real version. That means beneficial ownership, offshore entities, observer rights, side arrangements, anything else that affect how the company's ownership story is understood. Second, all foreign relationships, not just investors, need to be mapped. That's going to include things like contractors, licensors, research collaborators, joint development partners, any relevant affiliations involving founders, owners, and key personnel. Third, you need to separate passive exposure from operational dependence. So a passive investor may be one kind of issue, but a critical foreign workflow dependency is a wholly different kind of issue. If you don't distinguish these categories internally, your analysis is not done yet. Fourth, you need to make sure your internal story matches your external disclosure. If you can't properly explain the company's structure simply and consistently, you need to keep working because clarity is the real asset here. Okay, so what's the strategic takeaway? The new SBIR law did not just reopen a funding pathway, it made clear that security review and foreign ties analysis now sit much closer to the center of the program. And that changes the executive team's job. You're not just applying for non-dilutive funding anymore, you're presenting the company inside a framework that now cares much more about ownership, affiliations, business relationships, and security risk. And the companies that do well in that environment will be the ones that take a proactive approach. Here's the bottom line. This is part of our 7-part series on the new SBIR law because foreign ties and national security review are now a much bigger founder issue. It's not just a vague increased security issue. It is now built more directly into the actual framework. Your cap table is not just a finance document. It's now part of a broader diligence and credibility story. If the story is incomplete, then that will affect your ability to raise funds and get through the diligence phase for any award. Founders who do the best here will be the ones who map the structure early, they can explain it clearly, and they treat it like a governance issue and not just a disclosure issue. Join me on the path to decoding law, technology, and innovation to grow your business. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Until next time.